Tonight we document the US-1's little brother. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. That's right, we're finally documenting the Gibson U2. I bought this thing a couple of months ago, and it's not all original, but this one's got some unique specs. This one takes more so after its brother with the giant gaudy Gibson logo on the headstock. Most U2s do not have this. They have the regular banana style headstock with a Gibson silkscreen. However, there's also these meat cleaver-esque headstocks that also have the Gibson decal. But I personally think the gaudy logo looks the best because it's just so strange. So, you have to understand this is a time period piece. These were introduced around 1986. 1985 was the final year of the Norland years of Gibson, and 1986 starts off with the Henry J period. So, the 80s were a crazy time. People liked these big, pointy shredder guitars. Gibson was failing as a company in general. They've got new ownership. They're trying to figure out what they need to do. So they kind of came out with these things. Strat copies. But trust me, Gibson was pretty crazy before this, pretty much the entire 80s. Check out an SG Special 400 or the EXP 425. Don't forget the Alpha/Q series or any of the XPLs in general. So let's talk about it. We've got a unique Stratocaster style shape. The U2s did indeed have body binding. It is important to note that not every single one had binding. You don't have any comfort carve right here, but you do still have the carve on the back. They are set neck construction, which kind of makes them stand against the competition. Whether a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave that up to you. But they had a desirable HSS setup. However, I never knew this before today. There was actually an HH version out there too, looking back in old manuals. Just like the original US-1 prototype actually had slimbuckers in it, 3 of them. But then we have a Kahler Floyd Rose-esque system on it. Speaking of systems, you have a coil split push-push pot. These are very infamous for breaking, so if yours no longer works, it's okay, you're in good company. Just replace it. But that will split your bridge. But then you also have this really weird control layout. You don't have a toggle switch. You don't have a blade switch either. You choose what you want on bridge, middle, neck. So technically it gave you more options because then you could get the neck and bridge together, similar to like Fender's S1 switching. But our U2 was created out of basswood and featured a select maple neck. And this particular one has a pretty nice ebony fretboard, adorned with dot inlays. They came in a variety of colors. Sometimes you can find a cool blue one, sometimes there's red. And just for fun, now we can talk about the US-1. Now you might just think, okay, they put a flame maple top on it to make it look fancy. They added a back layer of binding, and that's pretty much your only difference besides your inlays and your fancier headstock, depending on which version you're looking at. Not exactly. These have considerably different bodies. It's actually mahogany, but they chamber it out and fill it with balsa wood, so they called it a chromite body. And then they put these maple veneers over top of them just to make them beautiful. Like, if Gibson was going to make a Stratocaster, this is exactly what it should be. There's also a few versions out there that get the back veneer. And according to old marketing materials, these got a hard rock maple neck versus the select maple neck. So slightly better quality in general. One of the things I like about the US-1 is the fact that you can find stop bar ABR1 varieties that don't have the Kahler system on it. To this day, I have not found a U2 in that configuration. Between both of these models, there weren't necessarily set specs that had to be followed throughout its production. It just seems to have evolved over time. And that's why talking about these can be a little bit confusing because they weren't well documented and they're not all that well loved. These things are rare, they're getting more expensive all the time. The U2 is the way to go if you want an affordable, weird Gibson Stratocaster. But these lasted from approximately 1986 through very early 1990. But in my opinion, I've always been a fan of the U2 and US-1 because they're relatively well-made super strats. They just didn't receive wide adaptation. The model that replaced them after their run is the Gibson M3, which was their most successful super strat. But I use the term most successful very lightly because Gibson is not known as a super strat maker. But to learn more about this unique guy, let's go ahead and throw him on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. On the workbench, let's see if we can make sense of this. So thanks to finding that old catalog, I was able to actually find out what they called these things. The ML180 single coil. Sadly, there's no other markings on the back of these, so it can kind of be hard to find these separately for sale to restore your guitar because there's just no good names or anything for it. And for whatever reason, these pickups are prone to dying. Rather than repair to replace, a lot of people just replace it. Which I was really just hoping it was a white cover put over top of the original, but no, it's a DP117, which is the HS3 DiMarzio pickup, which is a hot single coil. If you're trying to verify if your US1 or U2 is original, this is what you're looking for. You see how there's like a yellowish color to the bobbin? That's how you know. And then apparently this is called an HPAF. I would assume that stands for hot PAF. It looks very similar to a Tim Shaw PAF of the era, but it has dual leads coming out of it. And you'll also notice the adjustable row of pole pieces is done up in gold. The catalog called the 2 humbucker model using Spotlight humbuckers. So we talked about the Spotlights in the custom Lite series, which came out around the same time as this. That means if you're trying to restore a very expensive custom Lite, you could potentially grab one of these and borrow the humbucker, but obviously you're not going to have the correct cover for it. Here's what those routes look like. They utilize 2 foam blocks, and then our replacement pickup has some additional springs that weren't there originally. Now let's talk about our controls. The up position is off, so we can have just our bridge, reading 8.97, and remember, we've got the coil split on that, which does indeed work, 4.55. Then we could also get just the neck, or just the middle, and unfortunately I might have to look at our wiring to see what's going on here. In theory here, you can have neck and middle, you can have neck and bridge, you can have bridge, middle, any combination you want. I've always found these switches to look cool, but they're quite fiddly. You can't get to different positions quickly. It's not a good setup in my opinion. I'm sure you could rewire it to a similar switch that has a 5-way selector on it, and then have one for coil splits and then one for in and out of phase, because currently they're just 2 positions. But you will notice that the knob on this one looks strange. Over here you've got your regular speed knob, but this one, according to Randy Leonard, the reason why it's all reamed out like that is the knobs did not fit these new push-push pots. So rather than order custom knobs, they just instructed the employees to ream them out. So we've got finish checking all over this thing, and it's vertical, so that usually means some sort of like a moisture type thing. That occurs on the 80s Gibsons that are using alder bodies. However, this one being basswood, according to our spec sheet anyway, I'm sure it varies example to example anyway, it wouldn't surprise me if this particular one ended up being alder. But thankfully, it's not flaking up. We've got a ding right here, and a ding right there. The rest of it's really mainly just finish checking and polishing swirls. Kind of a cool pickguardless Stratocaster vibe, but now we need to talk about our freaky trem system. So it's got a plastic plate on top of the body. I could not find out how to remove that. I'm pretty sure it's like glued in place. But it's essentially just acting as a shim. It gives the trem system a little bit more height. But then it has these 2 posts that go into the body right here to set your height adjustment. Then there's 2 screws that help secure this to the top right there. However, you don't even need it anymore. And then it's some sort of a licensed Floyd Rose on here. But it's kind of interesting. You've got your fine tuners, but then you have these. They flip up. I believe this locks into place, so it makes it so nothing else will move as far as your action and adjustment goes, but you don't actually have to cut the ball ends of the strings off. It just strings through like a normal Stratocaster style. But you've got your locking nut up here, but that just goes in the body like so. But moving on from our body, we've got the maple neck with the ebony fretboard. The 80s small dots, I really like them, and I normally don't like dot inlays. I've always had a hard time telling if it's real mother of pearl or just really good acrylic. I think it looks like acrylic stuff most of the time, but then sometimes you get it at an angle and it moves like the real deal stuff, and it looks so good. Looks like a 12-inch fretboard radius. And it looks like they were going for a 25.5-inch scale length. But we have a nut measurement of 1.68 inches. And that increases to 2.07 by the 12th. First fret neck depth, 0.82 and 0.91 by the 12th. Here's your neck at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. There's that cool Gaudy Gibson logo. That makes this particular U2 extra special. The regular headstock style ones definitely go a lot cheaper than these though, so if you really don't care about this, find a different version. Our truss rod has life left in it. I had to adjust it. When I first got this one, it was a real banana neck. Here's what's left of the truss rod cover. It had to get chopped when they installed the locking nut. And now we're on to the back. unfortunately, somebody went crazy back here. So our neck pickup, I'm able to confirm this thing is dead. It looks like somebody tried to rewind this before, because those tapes do not look exactly original. So I just took it out of the guitar. I'll keep it in my parts drawer, and maybe one day I'll get somebody to rewind it. Mainly so they can take a look to see what goes wrong with these things. Why do they always break? I've reviewed 2 of these Super Strats from Gibson, and they all seem to have problems with these single coils. And for a minute, I was convinced even our brand new DP pickup was dead. So I just completely took this thing out of the circuit because it was doing us no good. And at this point, I was left with a humbucker. It does read the exact same as the Spotlight humbuckers. However, the Spotlights don't have the 2 leads. It just has the single gray one right before they went to the HBL series. So this is basically just the pre-Spotlight humbucker pickup, known as the HBAF as we were talking about earlier. So I went ahead and put a Seymour Duncan 59 in our bridge pickup position just to give us some pizzazz. And then after doing that, I was like, there's no way a newer pickup could just be dead like that. So I did a little bit more testing, and I found out what they did. They were using the wrong lead. So this white one was taped off to this black one over here, and this is the hot lead that you needed for this particular pickup. So I don't know what this red one was for, but it wasn't doing us anything. So yes, the middle pickup works, but unfortunately I had already modified all this to essentially bypass everything, so it's just a straight to output jack. None of these controls work anymore, which took it too far for me to put this back in the circuit. But to give it a filled out look, I Sharpied the white cover black, left that pickup in there just for fun, and we can run our humbucker. It's a real shame too, the condition of this one really wasn't that bad. Had things not been toyed with, I probably would have kept this. There you can see the push pot. That one almost looks replaced. I forgot to double check what they looked like originally. But we do have the mini toggle switches of the late 80s. That could be used to help somebody restore it. Then we've got an original pot there. Here's what the trem system looks like on the back. We've got 3 springs. And then we've got some more scratches, finish checking, average wear and tear. That's just some clear coat bubbling essentially. Nothing to worry about. Output jack is kind of beat up, but works. Then I thought about taking these black Strat buttons, because finding Gibson original black buttons is rare, but then I noticed as I was taking them off, those aren't black, those are just regular chrome, but somebody Sharpied them, so it was really funny that I Sharpied the neck pickup. Somebody had the same idea. Running up the back side of the neck, some impressions, light scratches, and then our serial number, dating it to the 82nd day of 1987. 502 is your production number within the Nashville plant. And you can see your seam line right there of your headstock piece and your black Grover tuners. This one weighs just a hair under 7.5 pounds. 7 pounds, 7.3 ounces. Let's go ahead and hear how this one sounds, I guess. Now that we know all about the Gibson U2, well, at least as much as we could learn about from this one. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was initially going to skip this one because of the replaced middle pickup, and maybe I should have, but hey, It's documented. It's an episode. I hope you enjoyed it anyways. As soon as I plugged it in, I made the realization I made an error. It's 59 neck JB bridge, not 59 in the bridge. So it's a neck pickup as a bridge humbucker. And in toying around with that, I forgot to set the action again, so it's like ridiculously high. That's why it was hard to play this thing. It does go down just fine, but if you're interested in being the next owner of this one, it's going to be on my website. Consider it a project. You need to put some electronics in it and do some final setup and get this trem system back in order. But it does kind of remind me of something Kirk Hammett would play. That's why I had to do a little bit of Metallica, but I just love the look of these things with the meat cleaver headstock with the big gaudy Carina Gibson style logo. It works well. Alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoy your new knowledge. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.